And now, of course, the Afghan army are being armed by the Americans to fight the Taliban, but Afghan armies in this area are very weak in their weapons, just as in Iraq, and therefore a great deal of American weaponry has once again ended up in the hands of the Taliban. And of course, it gets external support from the Saudis and the Gulf in terms of finance, with which more weapons can be brought forward. So the Pathan are extremely well armed and sit on this border territory between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Carry on for a bit. Right, so who are the Taliban next? In strict terms, the movement is a movement of students, Talib, who completed their initial studies at a seminary, a madrasa, following the Deobandi as opposed to Barelvi tradition in South Asian Islam. The Deobandis in some ways newcomers to the area. Traditionally, the population of this area were much more Sufi-inspired, and in that sense, Barelvi rather than Deobandi. Most of the Talibs were initially, if you could keep an eye on it, most of the Talibs were initially recruited from poverty-stricken Pathan and Punjabi families from the Pakistani side of the border, not least because Talibs are given free board and lodging in the madrasa in returning for a narrow, literalist and highly authoritarian interpretation of the Quran and Hadith. One of the attractions, though, is its free education, and the Pakistan government's own schooling system is in complete chaos. So many poor parents see sending their children to the madrasa not only as a religious act, but at least they'll get an education there, which they're not going to get from the government. Anyway, within the context of most of those madrasas, particularly the Deobandi ones, the students are encouraged to sacrifice themselves as martyrs, as shaheed, to the cause of Islam, on the grounds that the elimination of kufr, of unbelief, will pave the way to the construction of a social order based on the principles of the Sharia. And in doing so, sweep away all traces of the current unjust and exploitative socio-political order in this area, which is effectively the government of Pakistan in Islamabad, and led now by Benazir Bhutto's husband, and also by Hamid Karzai in Afghanistan, both of whom are now popularly seen as supporters of the Americans. And moreover, both in Pakistan and Afghanistan are undeveloped, and deeply unequal societies. So the poor in these areas have much to complain about. So the current moral standing of the Taliban. Well, no guerrilla insurgency can survive long in the absence of substantial popular support. And the largely Pathan insurgents who swept central authority aside in both southeastern Afghanistan and on the Pakistani border are greatly admired. Firstly, for standing up to the American Crusaders. I think George Bush's declaration, we're going to have to crusade against Islam in the aftermath of the war, and I like this well remembered. Secondly, for standing up to the Western elites who hold power in both Afghanistan and Pakistan, thereby, so it's hoped, advancing the interests of the poor and the marginalised, because at least the Taliban seems to be standing up for them. And for seeking to restore law, order and the dignity of Islam. Whether they actually achieve that is another matter, but certainly their aim is to restore order. How popular are the Taliban? Well, it's hard to say. On the one hand, they're very strongly respected for what they are seeking to do, which is to challenge the invaders and throw them out. And of course to do what Afghans have regularly done to invaders, including the British Army, many times over history, and defeated them by guerrilla warfare. So they're popular for doing that. However, in terms of their own social policies, they are highly authoritarian, and it's clearly most unwise to argue with a Kalashnikov. And the Taliban are very ready to deploy their weaponry on all those whom they consider to be kafirs, who stand outside the borders of Islam, including many Muslims who are not conducting Islam in the way that they think Islam is conducted. But as respect for central authority in both Pakistan and Afghanistan has waned. And especially when crude and indiscriminate force is being deployed to suppress insurgency, as is happening right now in Sawat. Because as far as I can see, what the Pakistani authorities trying to do there is simply drain the area of its entire non-Taliban population and then blow it up. Even if they manage to get some of the population out, 1 million is only a portion of the population of Sawat. By the time they go in and blow it there and blow the Taliban up, they'll have great difficulty because it's guerrilla territory, they're up in the mountains, they're well defended and all the rest. They're going to smash the whole valley up. There'll be nothing left to come back to. Nevertheless, the Taliban, who are, as far as the local population is concerned, regarded as our boys rather than outsiders and poodles of the Americans, are frequently regarded as the lesser of two evils. Particularly, of course, if your houses are being bombed from the air, as both the Americans and the Pakistani army are working on together. So, are the Taliban Muslims? Well, one can see why one might reach that conclusion. The Deobandis, like their Wahhabi sponsors, the Wahhabis is in fact firmly in control in Saudi Arabia, actively reject the values of the European Enlightenment. And most notably, the concept of gender equality. More significantly, they also reject the greater part of mainstream Islamic thinking, including the open-minded Sufi tradition, which has for long provided, and still do provide, the bedrock of popular Islam throughout this whole area. Now, the Taliban are seen as freedom fighters. They are not seen, and they are not in any way